Good morning, it's Friday, December 5th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story. Last time we talked, it was 2 weeks ago. We jumped over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend down here in the U.S. We talked about a colder and snowier end to November and start to December, and that's exactly what we've seen. It is cold, and it's going to stay that way through the middle of December. A little bit of ebbing and flowing. Some southern Alberta and southwest Saskatchewan locations may tap into a brief warm-up or two as some of these little clippers kind of sneak through the region, but snow is beginning to stack up in some areas, and we got more snow on the way over the next 10 days. Total liquid precipitation over the last 10 days, again, pretty splotchy across the region here as we talk about a couple clippers making their way through here. Snow accumulating in corridors over the last week or so. We'll take a look at snow depth. This is modeled snow depth right now. So again, we've got some areas here that have been missed. We've got some pockets that are starting to stack up the snow, and we've seen this corridor that sweeps from the Canadian Prairies down into the Midwest. In my backyard here, we've got half a foot, 15 centimeters of snow on the ground. And you look back over the last 4 or 5 winters, it's taken us to January to get any sort of cold air. So a big early start to winter from the prairies all the way down into the Corn Belt of the U.S., thanks in part to a pattern that is just stuck like this. A big ridge across the Pacific with a big trough here across the Hudson Bay. So the flow of the jet stream going over that ridge and then kind of diving from northwest to southeast across the Canadian Prairies and then running right through the northern plains into the Great Lakes here. So we've got this flow from essentially northwest to southeast. This is a textbook setup for reinforcing shots of cold, dry air coming out of the Arctic. You can see it getting pulled down right here. And then these clipper systems that come in from the Pacific, they ride over the top of that ridge and they kind of spin their way through the prairie, bringing that shot of cold air south with them and another dose of light snow across the region. And so that's exactly what we've got right now. We've got some patchy areas of snow. Some of this could be intense in some areas. Looks like we've got some snow squalls here from Edmonton down towards Calgary over towards Brooks. So maybe a burst of some heavier snow here across portions of Alberta into southwestern Saskatchewan as we head through the day. We've got flurries falling all the way from Saskatoon all the way down to Winnipeg across the Highway 16 corridor as well. And this is really the theme over the next 10 days. I mean, you got probably chances for snow flurries at the very least, if not some moderate to heavier snow just about every day across the prairie, again, over the next 10 days or so, thanks to this persistent pattern. Temperatures across the region, again, you see that dividing line where I mentioned southern Alberta, southwest Saskatchewan, a little bit warmer. You're closer to the freezing mark with this system sneaking through, but you see the front kind of draped right across Highway 16, where north of that, you're talking about temperatures minus 10 to minus 15, and we'll keep tugging this air south across the prairie. So you'll see maybe a warmer day or two and then another blast of this really bitterly cold, dry Arctic air. Now we'll take a look at the forecast for snowfall over the next several days. And again, you see heaviest across southern Alberta into southwestern Saskatchewan with the system over the next 24 hours, but these little clippers continue to just ride over the top of the ridge, bringing light doses of snow. So the NAM, the North American model, the forecast for total snow from Friday all the way through midday Monday, December 8th, you see that heavier corridor where we're talking about, maybe upwards of 30 inches in some areas from, southern Alberta into southwest Saskatchewan with a widespread swath of, 10 to 20 from western Alberta into southern portions of Saskatchewan. A little lighter as you head toward Highway 16, but just about everyone with the chance for at least some minor accumulating snow over the next 3 to 4 days. And as we look at the European model, same time frame from Friday to midday Monday, December 8th, and you see a little wider spread brush here of maybe, 2 to 3 inches, getting up north of 5 to 10 centimeters of snow just over the weekend from these clipper systems running through. And as I jump to the next slide, let's look at total snow forecast by the European model for the next week. So this takes us all the way now to Friday, December 12th. We've got a couple more significant systems here that could run through the prairie with a wider spread swath of, 20 to 30 centimeters of snowfall possible here as we get to mid to late next week. And the pattern jumps out, clear as day to you right now with these heavy snows across coastal portions and higher elevations of British Columbia. These clippers then that run from Alberta, we call them an Alberta clipper, right down into the Great Lakes and parts of the Corn Belt. And you could just see that corridor of snow perfectly mirroring the flow of the jet stream right now, which comes over the top of that ridge in the Pacific and then dives down around the base of that trough, circulating across the Hudson Bay, again giving us that northwest to southeast kind of trajectory on these clippers, and that northwest to southeast swoop of snow that runs from Alberta down into the Great Lakes, where over the next 10 days, we're talking about another foot or more, or foot or so of snow in some of these areas. I don't want to get too carried away. 30 centimeters of snow or so possible through that little corridor over the next 7 days. And as we kind of time this out and walk it back with the European model here to Friday, we've talked about this corridor of snow right here that could be a bit heavier over the next 24 to 36 hours. You see that right here. This would be kind of Friday night. That would be the heaviest snow, and then tapering off on Saturday. We get into the day Saturday night. This is now Sunday. Snow continuing, at least in light fashion, across Alberta and Saskatchewan through Saturday night into Sunday. And then flurries across the area Sunday night into Monday. Now we'll roll it a little bit further. This is when we get maybe a more significant system to start to show up on the forecast models here mid next week. So Tuesday into Wednesday, you see a more intense area of low pressure, a little warmer air being tugged in just in advance of this. So possible we could get a wintry mix, maybe even a couple of raindrops here briefly as this system emerges Monday night into Tuesday. We tug that colder air back down across the prairie, so everyone flips back to snow Tuesday night into Wednesday. This is not a long-lasting warm-up. And then we get another system, does the same thing. You see it emerge here next Thursday, December 11th. Same thing, tug a little warm air northward, maybe portions of Alberta, southern Saskatchewan getting in on a wintry mix here, maybe briefly some liquid precipitation, and then that corridor of snow on the north side here continues to run from northwest to southeast down into the prairies. And I imagine if I continue to run this loop out, we'll see the same thing kind of starting to repeat with this big area of high pressure that sinks in. That's a lot of cold air as we go into next week. We're getting 10 days out there, so we'll kind of pause there and we'll recalibrate as we get to the end of next week and see how long this pattern is really going to persist. But as I show you the next 10 days, your probability of picking up 3 inches or more of total snow across the region here. So we're talking about 10 centimeters or so, 10 to 15. And we're talking about 70+% across the entirety of the prairie, but you can see some corridors with higher percentages there. We'll flip it over to look at the probability of 6 inches or more. So now we're talking about 15 centimeters plus over the next 10 days. And we start to walk it back to about 30 to 50%, except for a couple of these corridors. And then we'll jump it up higher, a foot, 30 centimeters of snow over the next 10 days. And we kind of get down to that 0% probability. So what I pick out from a pattern like this is high probabilities of frequent light snows across the prairie. Certainly a chance one of these performs quite significantly with maybe a 15 to 20 centimeter snowfall event from one of these systems. But in general, they bring in reinforcing shots of cold, dry Arctic air, and they bring in another light dose of powdery, light snow that blows around really easily and can accumulate pretty efficiently at times, but not a pattern that's really bringing in a big, widespread swath of, I'm trying to think, really high impact, high snow, and high winds on top of that. We're not getting blizzard conditions across the prairie. It's just these, death by flurries is really how I kind of describe a pattern like this, and death by these shots of Arctic air. Again, you see folks in southern Alberta, far southwest Saskatchewan, at times you tap into some warm-ups. There's another nudge of warmer air as these systems ride over the top of that ridge, and you get that flow kind of pulling some warmer air into the region, but then a lot of cold air off to the north. Very easy to just drag that right back down. So the further east you are, Manitoba, Winnipeg, you're just going to be straight up cold. And then up toward the Highway 16 corridor, pretty much straight up cold the next 10 to 14 days as well. But further south, further west you go, the more your temperatures are going to kind of ebb and flow at times. Now, I mentioned the kind of interesting thing about this pattern is it's very cold, it's frequently snowing, but without big areas of low pressure running through. We're not talking about blizzard conditions. We're not really talking about much in the way of high winds either. So your max wind gusts over the next week, we're talking about maybe some of the higher elevations getting to 50 to 60 kilometer per hour wind gusts here with some of these storms moving through. But in general, they bring some blustery winds on the lighter side where we're talking about gusts 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. I think the most significant storm system that we see here with some of these winds is late in the forecast period here. It's around Tuesday, December 8th and 9th, and it's kind of faster westerly winds on the backside as this low dives in. We don't get the real strong winds associated with the snow. We're not talking about whiteout conditions or blizzards or significant accumulating snow. It's just very cold. It's flurries, and sometimes it's a little breezy out there. So I meant, again, Calgary, further west, the more your temperatures ebb and flow. We're talking about a high of -4 today, -10 tomorrow, back to 4 above on Monday, 3 above on Tuesday, and then look at that, -10 for your highs as we get to the end of next week into next weekend. Same thing in Edmonton, a little bit of a rebound here. Balmy -4 on Monday, back down to -15 as we head through the next weekend. Saskatoon, -20 for the high tomorrow, up to a balmy -9 on Monday and Tuesday, right back to the minus teens as we head into next week. Regina, and then we'll finish here in Winnipeg. As I mentioned, further east, you don't really get that warm-up. -9 today is as warm as it gets. A lot of days here with those highs -15 to -17, with overnight lows -25 or so at times over the next 7 days. We'll meet again next week. We'll recalibrate. We'll talk about what it looks like as we head through the last half of December, finishing up what is starting off as a cold, snowy month across the Canadian Prairies.